From all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
The largest union talk radio program in the South. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. If you've got anything to add, you can leave us a voicemail. That phone number is 844-899-TVLR. We're not opening the phones until the second half of the program, though, because we've got a couple of guests and a couple of stories that we want to make sure that we have time for. But you can always leave us a voicemail, and we'll try to react to it on the next program. I want to jump right into this story, though, because, folks, this an evil spirit has a hold of the hearts of men in Alabama, and we need to talk about it. That's right. I'm talking about the University of North Alabama privatizing their environmental service workers, like their groundskeepers, right? The people who kind of clean up the university. And it is just so really cut and dry. Like the decision makers here are doing a bad thing. And it is difficult for me to understand the decision-making process that how you could rationalize this to yourself other than demonic stuff having its grips on your mind, like as a non-religious person, right? It's just so crazy. Aria Pons with WAFF reported on this story. She interviewed some of the affected workers. Let's play this clip one.
A handful of environmental service employees tell me they're between a rock and a hard place after the University of North Alabama contracted out a company called SSC to take over their custodial division.
We're not being thought of as people. We're being thought of as things.
That you can find online on WAFF is employees express concerns after UNA partners with private company. Definitely check it out for more information. Aria did a great job, I think. A lot of times I find that local news stories are lacking when it comes to stuff like this, but I really appreciate her reporting here. It really did a good job, and she was able to collect a few different workers and their thoughts on it. But I'm going to talk some more about it, but it really is a betrayal of these workers. Listen to one of them tell Aria why she works for UNA.
The reason a lot of people takes the job at UNA is for the benefits, for the PTO time, for the sick time, for the holidays off, to be with your family. And now we're not going to have any of that.
The change will come with a pay increase, but employees say that increase is offset by higher insurance costs, up to $375 biweekly.
Did you catch that at the end? Health insurance for $375 biweekly. That is $700 a month.
Increase.
I think that's the total, increased to $375 biweekly. But that's $700 a month for insurance for people who are going to be making $12 an hour. $12 an hour. And that's the problem here, right? It's, I'm generally negatively predisposed towards privatization because generally it means bad things for workers. But that's why privatization is bad, because it means bad things for workers. The top line here is that these workers who were keeping the University of North Alabama clean were previously only making between $10 and $11 an hour, but they kept those jobs because they had security, they had a pension, they had time off, they had cheap health care. That's why they kept this job, and they were willing to sacrifice their labor for $10 to $11 an hour. Now, this private contractor, SSC Education Services is going to be taking over the contract. The workers are going to be employees of SSC instead. They're going to be making now $12 an hour, but you just heard healthcare is going to significantly increase. They're going to lose their pension. Now they're going to have a 401k, a scam instead of a pension. They are only going to they are going to go from all of the state holidays and everything like that on top of paid vacation to 5 vacation days per year. I mean, crazy. This is just crazy. The United Campus Workers of Alabama, a union representing, workers on college campuses in Alabama, responded in an open letter to the university. And I'm going to read from it at length because I haven't even told you all of the crazy stuff. I mean, it's just so insane. I'm going to read from it at length. I encourage folks to find UCWAL on Facebook. You can read the full thing. I'm going to be reading for most of it right now, though. But they say, we're writing to oppose the university's recent decision to outsource its environmental service workers to SSC Education Services on the following grounds. They list 5 reasons. Number 1, while SSC Educational Services claims to be headquartered in Knoxville, Tennessee, it is run by Compass Group, based in Surrey, UK, the United Kingdom. The British hedge fund that BlackRock is its largest investor, intending to maximize profit for its shareholders. The privatization and outsourcing of units on our regional state campus and the profits that will flow outside of the region to SSC and the Compass Group are the exact opposite of local investment, which UNA claims they want to do. And that's what we see time and time again with these when these hedge funds like BlackRock or whatever the other ones are called, when they purchase Alabama companies, they steal money from the communities. I mean, we saw this with Warrior Met, right? Warrior Met was previously Jim Walters Energy, and Warrior Met, backed by BlackRock and other private equity firms, purchased Jim Walters Energy, turned it into Warrior Met, and over the course of, and they cut the coal miners' pay and benefits and everything like that so substantially that over the course of 5 years, if the coal miners had just been able to keep the benefits and compensation that they had under their union contract with Jim Walters Energy, if they had just stayed, not increased at all, just stayed, they would have had $1.1 billion more in their pockets going into the local communities. But instead, that $1.1 billion from 2016 to 2021 went to New York and to D.C. and to Australia into the pockets of billionaires and hedge fund managers. And that's what SSC Educational Services wants to do. They want to be able to take, because this money is going to go somewhere, right? It was going for these people who were making $10, $11 an hour. It was going to a pension. It was going to paid time off. It was going to health care. Now that money is going to go line the pockets of some vampire, blood-sucking leech in the United Kingdom. What the hell? That's only the first reason. I'm so enraged. Like, I'm literally red and I'm hot. It's insane. Number 2, they say it's a betrayal of trust. And this is what we were talking about, what this worker told WAFF, that we work for this company because of all these benefits, not for the pay. So UCW says environmental service employees who only made between $10 and $11 per hour when working for UNA were told that their wages would increase to $12 an hour under UNA. Still not enough. Yet they were given only 2 days to decide whether or not they would sign on with SSC to keep their jobs. Many of their benefits have evaporated as a result of this transition, including time toward becoming vested in the state pension system, as well as accrued sick time. Some employees left hundreds of hours of unspent sick time on the table. Just stolen from them. Hundreds of hours, weeks of time that they had earned. Stolen from them by leeches. Health Healthcare costs for most employees will go up under this new contract, erasing any wage increase. Many employees had been staying on at UNA despite low wages for benefits that have now been rescinded. Employees are losing the job security they had at a state institution. Under SSC, they can be fired based on an inflexible point system. SSC told former UNA employees at their staff orientation that their previously scheduled vacation time would not be honored, and that they now have 5 vacation days per year. Employees must work holidays, deemed deep clean days, for only regular pay, and will receive points if they call off on a holiday, with 7 points resulting in termination. Many of the environmental service staff are working mothers who will now be required to spend holidays away from their children. UCW points out that the company's labor business model is exploitative. The company courts universities by offering initial contracts that seem to cut cost, yet journalism on this company indicates that a number of districts have rescinded their contracts over time as the company practiced mass layoffs and rate hikes that led to instability as well as increased expenses. Research indicates that outsourcing university services to private companies fueled by profit motives does not save costs over time. 4. UCW points out that UNA also jeopardizes public safety by transitioning environmental service workers in our buildings and dormitories to contract work. Faculty, staff, and students had built relationships with our environmental service staff over the years, and SSC has a reputation for high turnover among its employees. Who is going to have the keys to our offices and dorm rooms under an exploitative company that seeks to maximize its profit? Turnover threatens our ability to know and build trusting relationships with staff. Additionally, UNA prides itself on the beauty and cleanliness of its campus and employees. When they were state employees with state benefits, the employees shared in that pride. The transition to SSC will negatively impact the beauty and hygiene of the university's campus. And then number 5, we know that UNA will continue to try to cut costs at the bottom of the wage hierarchy, and that they will soon look to pick off other units on campus for outsourcing to SSC. Meanwhile, UNA continues to invest in expensive capital projects and the salaries of UNA's top 3 administrators alone. The university president, VP of Financial and Business Affairs, and Provost tie up more than $1 million of the university's annual budget. According to MIT's living wage calculator, an adult in Florence with no children must make $19.27 an hour in order to survive without government assistance. A university that can afford to build a $65 million sports stadium and that can afford to pay its president over $49,000 per month can afford to pay living wages and provide better benefits for its essential workers. I just can't. How do you, as a university president, I mean, like, you're presumably looking at your bank account on the same computer that you are signing your name to this contract to steal money from some of the lowest paid and most exploited workers on your campus. How do you do that and go to sleep at night? Demonic possession is the only thing that I can think of. She needs to repent. I don't know.
Well, a couple things. I dealt with this in Huntsville City Schools as I represented employees, and without a doubt, the outsourcing, privatization, it resulted in worse services and more cost, right? It doesn't actually save money. It may look that way at first to the university or the school system or whatever public agency it is, but in the long run, it always costs more. It always has higher turnover. It always has worse services. One example with this particular company, South Bend Community Schools, terminated its contract just recently. And they said it's actually going to save them millions of dollars a year to do it, to bring it in-house. And the board members were celebrating what a big decision this was because of the worst services they have been receiving. So, it's just really the wrong move to make. And I encourage all workers out there who work for a college campus to get involved with United Campus Workers. They're present throughout the South. Here in Alabama, you can go to ucwal.org. That will bring you to the United Campus Workers of Alabama.
All right. Our next segment, we're going to be talking to Bill Blackman. Is Bill in the Zoom? Bill Blackman is the business manager of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, IBEW Local 136. He is also president of the Alabama State Building and Construction Trades Council, the Federation of Building and Construction Trades Unions in Alabama. Bill, welcome to the Valley Labor Report. It's great to have you back.
Hey, Jacob. Thanks for having me, buddy.
I really appreciate your time. You said you had a little bit of a sinus infection, so I hope you're feeling a little bit better this morning. Hope your recovery continues to go well.
Just forgive me when my voice cracks and I have to clear my throat.
No worries. I'm sure that you sound fine to me. So I want to talk to you about your a new contract that your union ratified that you were telling me about the other day, and it sound like I was super excited when you told me about it. It sounds like a huge win. But before that, I wanted to ask a couple of foundation laying questions while we have you. And first, let's explain a little bit logistically speaking about like the difference between trade unions and other unions, like, for example, the United Auto Workers or my union, the American Federation of Government Employees. What are some of the differences between the IBEW and those other unions?
Well, first, if you give me a moment of personal privilege, let's put our priorities in order. Your family, Adam's family, everybody that has to do with this show on Saturday mornings, they all give of their time with you guys to put this on. So first of all, thank them for putting up with you guys and supporting you guys in doing this. And then thank you,
no doubt,
from our end of it for you guys putting this together and that sort of thing. So now back to your question. The construction industry is a little bit different than, say, the manufacturing or something like that. I mean, a lot of people are familiar with the idea of if you work in a tire plant, everybody in that tire plant is a member of United Steelworkers Local ABCD, you know, and you've got one union representing the employees and one employer. In the construction trades, we represent multiple employees throughout multiple contractors. One of the advantages for the contractors to be union with us is that we have this ready pool of manpower. You can't always, when you're in the construction industry, you can't always time out perfectly when one job completes and the next job starts. So oftentimes you're losing good experienced hands in between jobs, and you want to be sure you can replace them with good hands and all that, or you're having to, as a contractor, pay them when you don't have a project for them to be earning money back to you on. So from a contractor standpoint, you know, it's good to have that ready pool of manpower that you know how they're trained, and you know what level craftsmen they are by the different classifications we give them throughout their progress going through the apprenticeship. Our apprenticeships are set up, at least for IBEW, our apprenticeships are set up with a joint apprenticeship training committee. And that committee is made up half of the active contractors in your area and half from your local union leadership. And we have a curriculum, a national curriculum, because electricity flows in Washington State the same as it does in Alabama, or California, and the same as Alabama. No matter what the different states' politics is, the electricity flows the same way. So it's a national curriculum, and we, a journeyman wireman in Los Angeles, California is the same as a German wireman in Mobile, Alabama, because he's had the same access to training and that sort of thing. And that's really where my passion is in that apprenticeship, and that's how we're going to pass on the skilled trades to the next generation. Otherwise, we're going to end up with a throwaway society that, you know, we don't have somebody that can come in and fix it. So when something goes wrong with the wiring in your house, you just tear the house down and build another.
Right.
And we don't want to get to that point. We want to know that when we get in an elevator to ride to the top of this building, that we've got to meet somebody in, that we've got an experienced, skilled craftsman that built and maintains this elevator. You know, to go to your point, you were making in the earlier article about subsidizing something out. There may be cost savings, but what does that cost? What is saving that dollar today going to cost you come Wednesday? You know, that kind of thing. So
that's
anyway.
exactly right, and I think that, you know, the apprenticeship program is really one of is really the big thing that kind of differentiates building trade unions from some of the other unions. You know, I mean, the UAW, they like work with management to an extent to develop like the training programs for a production worker at GM or Ford or whatever. But the unions for the IBEW or the iron workers or the elevator constructors, you just mentioned the elevators. You know, the unions they play such an integral role in the training and development of new employees, and the apprenticeship programs for the building trade unions are really the gold standard. Like you said, if you've got an electrician who went through an IBEW apprenticeship program, you can have confidence they are going to know what needs to happen. And in many of the non-union, electrical contractors, that's not as true. You know, a lot of times a non-union electrician is going to know, they're going to know what they need to do, but sometimes they don't. And the apprenticeship programs, to the extent that they have them, some of them are like teach to the task, and they don't create a real like tradesman or tradeswoman, right? Real well-rounded. And the IBEW and the other trade unions do that. And then, after this, we'll talk about what's in the contract. But can you tell folks a little bit about collective bargaining? Like, how does that work? What makes it different than somebody in a non-union workplace negotiating for themselves?
Well, for IBEW, we sit down and negotiate with a contractors association, a union for contractors, basically. And they're, of course, negotiating from the standpoint of when we call the hall, we want to know what we get. When we call the hall, we want to know what we're going to have to pay and what a man hour will cost us, and that sort of thing, to add stability to their ability to go out and bid projects for the future and be successful. But Jacob, I apologize. In my ramblings just then, I lost your question. So hit me again.
Yeah.
Question.
How does collective bargaining work, and what are the benefits over bargaining individually in a non-union workplace? Yeah.
All right. So when we sit down and bargain, we know what everybody's making. This is where I was going with it. When you have to walk in on your own to the boss's office, you don't know for sure what anybody's, the starting point's not always the same, I guess is my point.
Right.
And if you're not starting from the same place, you're not going to get to the same finish line. If you're running a mile race and I've got to start over here in Leeds and you've got to start over here in Huntsville, our finish line's not going to be the same place, and that's we know where we are when we start a little better than just walking into the boss's office and saying, please give me this.
Right.
But also in being able to collectively bargain like we are, we're able to find the points where the union's interest in future align with the contractor's interest in future, such as the healthcare you were mentioning earlier, such as the training of the apprentices, having a voice in that training so that you're sure you're getting the best quality that graduates from our apprenticeship. So there's to me, there's a lot of advantages to both sides to wanting to do collective bargaining.
Absolutely.
The situation that you were mentioning with the UNA and all that, that just sounds like management wanting to wash their hands of responsibility of dealing with employees, and now they've handed it off to some company over in the UK and let them deal with it.
Exactly.
I just wonder what kind of tariff they're going to have to pay.
Maybe Trump will take care of it. We'll definitely be keeping an eye on that one. But it really is. It was wild to read about. And so let's talk about this contract. Tell me a bit about who the contractor is, how many people the new contract covers, and give me the highlights. Give me how much more money are your members going to be getting?
And it's again, this is for Local 136. Our jurisdiction stretches from Gadsden down through Birmingham, through Tuscaloosa, down through Greene County, and a big swipe right through the central Alabama state, central section of the state of Alabama. For this agreement, we settled on a 3-year agreement. That again alludes to the flexibility and the stability of being able to bid work for the future. It went into effect on June 1 of this year and will expire on May 31st of 2028. We typically bargain from a total package standpoint and allow our membership to hold meetings to discuss how to allocate it to the different funds. So we started out with a contract with a total package that was at $44.70, and what we settled on was 4% increase to that total package each year. That gives us $1.79 the first year, $1.86 the second, and $1.93 in the third year. And at the end of that third year, our total package will have gone from the $44.70 to $50.28. We were able to also, again, insurance plays into it like it does in everything in life nowadays. I mean, we're living in a country that's made the health and well-being of its citizens a for-profit business. So everybody's got to get their finger in the pie. Insurance is one of the biggest things that we have to consider and negotiate and maintain a decent hourly contribution. The way we do it, we do an hourly contribution and 140 hours in a month earns you coverage. And as long as you're working that 140 hours each month, you're continuing that coverage. We also can bank up to 6 months worth of coverage because we know that construction runs in a cyclical manner. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I warned you about sinuses.
No worries at all. And we're coming up at the end, and so we're going to have to go ahead and break. But
I'll run real quick. We were able to a lot of our apprenticeship. We realized that they're only using a single coverage part of the insurance and that sort of thing. So we were able to get them a bit of an extra increase on that by providing them with single coverage insurance. But what we also did was in some of that cost savings, some of it went to the check and some of it went to increasing the contribution rate so that along with this single coverage, they now have an HRA where they're putting $1.64 an hour into that HRA. And they can buy family coverage on top of what they've earned for themselves for $132 a month. Well, at $1.64 for 40 hours, you're more than covering that 132 if it's needed. But so many of our apprentices are under 26 and still on mom and dad's, or they're single and not needing the family coverage, that sort of thing. So we looked at how to roll that in for them and was able to get them an extra 7% of what journeyman scale is.
That's great.
And that's probably the two biggest things that we need to, that I wanted to highlight out of what came from this new 3-year agreement.
Absolutely. At least a minimum 12% general wage increase, increasing the bottom pay by another 7%, sounds like. So I'm really, sounds like a great contract. If somebody is in that area and wants to join the IBEW, graduating high school or transitioning careers, or is an electrician that wants to join the union, you can go to IBEW136.org. IBEW136.org. Bill Blackman, business manager, IBEW Local 136. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jacob. I appreciate you, buddy.
All right. Going to take a break. We'll be right back.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for the Valley Labor Report comes from the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers Union. Learn more by visiting www.ifpte.org.
Are you looking for a better future, a career that can have you set for life, and to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself? If you are, then consider a skilled trades apprenticeship with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades. The work of IUPAT is all around us, from the industrial painters who work on the bridges to drywall finishers, floor coverers, the glazers who install the glass in our skylines, and so much more. With an IUPAT apprenticeship, you earn while you learn and receive benefits while learning the trade, including a pension. We provide world-class education free of charge. That's right, no student debt. Our starting salaries for apprentices that graduate is above the national median salary with benefits for entire families. And you have the flexibility to take your trade wherever you'd like in the country to work. IUPAT District Council 77 covers our entire region, so give Adam Booth a call at 205-603-3142 for more information. Again, that phone number is 205-603-3142. Come build a better future with us today and join IUPAT.
We're the nurses, firefighters, and claims representatives that help keep our government services running. We respond to natural disasters. We care for our nation's veterans, and we investigate discrimination in the workplace. We are federal and D.C. government workers, and we are proud to serve the American people. Working in more than 70 agencies across the government, we know we can fulfill our mission because our union has our back. Learn more at AFGE.org. Paid for by the American Federation of Government Employees, AFL-CIO.
Since 1889, the National Association of Letter Carriers has protected the rights of city carriers as they deliver the mail and offer support for their community. The Alabama State Association of Letter Carriers makes their legislative voices heard when it comes to issues involving the U.S. Postal Service and the working members of the union. The National Association of Letter Carriers has been longtime supporters of the Muscular Dystrophy Association and the Stamp Out Hunger Food Drive. This message is sponsored by the Alabama Association of Letter Carriers. To learn more, visit NALC.org.
Unite Here is also a supporter of the Valley Labor Report. They are a labor union that represents 300,000 working people across Canada and the United States. Their members work in the hotel, gaming, food service, manufacturing, textile, distribution, laundry, transportation, and airport industries. You can learn more about Unite Here at unitehere.org.
Come all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old union has come in here to dwell.
A battle in the heart of Alabama caught our attention. Coal miners in one community, they've been on strike now for months.
Working as long as 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, in some of the most dangerous conditions.
I really think that the labor movement is the single greatest force for democracy in the history of the United States.
The story of Alabama is a story of not just resilience, but of militancy.
I say no contract, you say no code. No contract, no contract.
If we ain't all free, ain't none of us free.
You're listening to Alabama's only union talk radio show, The Valley Labor Report, with Adam Keller and Jacob Morrison.
That's right, folks. From the mountains of Tennessee to the bayous of Louisiana, broadcasting online and on the radio from the heart of the Tennessee Valley, the Spice Radio Studios in Huntsville, Alabama. This is the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison, here with my co-host and fellow agitator Adam Keller. We just wrapped a conversation with Bill Blackman, business manager of IBEW Local 136, about their new union contract. Also did a segment about UNA privatizing their environmental service workers. We're going to be talking to the AFLCIO Secretary-Treasurer Fred Redmond soon about lots of stuff. And then we'll have a whole second half of the show, so you might want to make sure that you're finding us online, Facebook, YouTube, to keep watching it. All that and more on today's program. If you want to be part of the show today, we've got a phone number. The line will be open in the second half of the show. We'd love to have your calls. 844-899-TVLR is the number. You can also leave us a voicemail throughout the week if you haven't gotten enough of us by the time that we wrap up here on the radio, or if you just want to see what we're up to throughout the week. You can find us anywhere you find anything online, in particular at our website, TVLR.fm, but we are also on YouTube, Facebook, and wherever you get your podcasts, all at the Valley Labor Report. Just a reminder, your support helps us stay on the air. Our largest single source of funding comes directly from our listeners, so if you want to become a sustaining donor to the program or make a one-time donation, you can go to TVLR.fm/donate or Patreon.com/The Valley Report, The Valley Labor Report. We've got a bunch of really cool merch for sale at TVLR.fm/store. And finally, if you're a member of a union, think about getting your local to sponsor the show. You can reach out to us for more details on that.
Hey, good morning, y'all. Let me add a disclaimer that any viewpoints or opinions expressed in this program belong solely to their author and do not necessarily represent any organization or sponsor. We welcome all of our listeners, whether you are on YouTube, Facebook, WVNN, WZZA, WHIV, WGOW, Means TV, or through your favorite podcast app. And we are proud to be part of the Labor Radio Podcast Network and encourage our listeners to check that out. As most of you know, we are not media professionals, just some diehard unionists who want to amplify the voices of the working class here in the American South. We're hoping this project can make a difference on that front, and we can't do it without you. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in, whether you're a loyal fan or a first-time listener. We really appreciate you spending some time with us today.
Every week, workers organize unions, bargain new contracts, win grievances, and put the bosses in their place. But the media doesn't talk about it, so we want to talk about it. Here's what workers in the U.S. South and the American colonies were up to from June 13th to the 20th. In new union campaigns, 78 workers at Norfolk Botanical Gardens in Norfolk, Virginia, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, IAMAW. 20 workers at SPX Cooling Technologies in Springfield, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with the International Association of Sheet Metal, Air, Rail, and Transportation Workers, SMART, Local 208SM. 18 workers at Starbucks in Kansas City, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with Starbucks Starbucks Workers United, and 13 workers at Twin City Toyota in Herculaneum, Missouri, filed a petition to hold a union election with the IAMAW District 9. In election results, 14 workers at Quest Diagnostics in Marietta, Georgia, voted against unionization with the Teamsters Local 728. 4 workers at Luxottica of America in Sterling, Virginia, voted in favor of unionization with the Sunglass Hut Dulles Airport Employees Union.
Not one I hear every week.
Yeah. 15 workers at CBRE in Washington, D.C. withdrew their petition for a union election with IUOE Local 99. 8 workers at Phillips 66 in Savannah, Georgia, voted in favor of decertifying their union, the United Steelworkers, USW Local 643. And 32 workers at Vestas Services in Dallas, Texas, voted in favor of unionization with the Teamsters Local 745. In grievances, unfair labor practices, and court cases, a federal judge has ordered the reinstatement of some NIH grants. The UAW, which represents 5,000 fellows at the NIH, applauded the move. The courts also granted a partial injunction to a coalition of municipalities, mostly in the South, that sued the Department of Health and Human Services over funding cuts. HHS now has to issue the grants while the case proceeds. AFSCME, a party to the suit, applauded the move. The nation's largest nurses union condemned the Supreme Court's decision regarding Tennessee's transgender health care ban for minors. In strikes and bargaining updates, workers at Lufthansa Technic in Puerto Rico, unionized with the IAM, held a rally last week demanding a fair contract after 3 years of the company stalling at the bargaining table. The 200 workers organized at the aviation company back in 2022. The United Steelworkers continues to sound the alarm about the dangers of the Nippon takeover of U.S. Steel. The promised investment from Nippon has already decreased by $3 billion. The union says that even though the media will move on, the union will stay focused on the fight, particularly as contract negotiations kick off next year. The United Campus Workers in Alabama released an open letter condemning the University of North Alabama's decision to privatize their groundskeeping staff. Nurses at the University Medical Center in New Orleans, unionized with National Nurses United, announced that they are preparing to strike on Monday. They say that the hospital is unfairly retaliating against union activists and fired one of the most prominent leaders back in May. The union is demanding he be reinstated. The Teamsters union is announcing that 3,000 Teamsters, members of Local 577 in Amarillo, Texas, at Tyson Foods, will be voting to authorize a strike next week due to the company's refusal to bargain in good faith. The union says workers are demanding higher wages, more paid time off, improved benefits, and protection against excessive overtime. They say that instead of giving the workers a fair contract, Tyson, a company that has reported over $50 billion in revenue last year, has been dragging its feet at the bargaining table. Vanderbilt University Medical Center in Tennessee announced that they are laying off 650 employees. In political and legislative updates, the VA under Trump has changed some of its bylaws, removing language prohibiting personnel from discriminating against patients because of their marital status or political beliefs. It also removed language forbidding management from discriminating against candidates for positions based on national origin, sexual orientation, marital status, membership in a labor organization, or lawful political affiliation. The VA did say, though, that federal laws and a 2013 policy directive would still ban discrimination based on those categories, even if the VA bylaws no longer do. Under the Senate version of the budget bill, Republicans seek to make federal employment even worse for new employees, increasing retirement contributions for all new hires to at least 9.4% of their salary and 14.4% of their salary if they want to keep their civil service protections. The Brotherhood of Railroad Signalmen, BRS, is condemning the company's latest attempts to deregulate rail even further. If we missed something, let us know about your union updates at tvlr.fm/contact. Our next segment is going to be with Fred Redmond, Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO, hailing from the United Steelworkers, USW. Brother Redmond, welcome to the Valley Labor Report. Thank you for your time.
Man, I'm glad I just got to catch the tail end of that excellent organizer report that you just gave. that report really indicates that there's a lot going on around this country involving unions and working people. But look, I'm honored to be here with you, Jacob. Great to be here.
I'm really appreciative of your time and appreciate the kind
Sure.
words. That's really what we want to what we wanted to do with the project. I mean, there are so many things. I'm constantly inspired by the work that union members are doing and the little things that we do that never get news items written about. Like, seriously, every single week, people are getting grievances won for their members. People are getting back pay for their members. People are winning people's jobs back. People are negotiating new contracts with 12% raises, increasing the wages for the bottom rung of people, and nobody knows about it. And most workers in the United States never get to feel that kind of power that comes along with putting the boss in their place. And so it's a really cool thing to be a part of a union, and glad to be able to elevate some of those stories.
That's great.
I wanted to talk to you about a few different things. The budget bill in particular has been at the top of a lot of news items, and it's really, really bad. It's really bad. I've got a couple of specific things that I want to ask you about the budget bill, but just top line, what does the AFL-CIO make of this reconciliation package?
Well, first of all, you have to excuse me. I think I've been on too many airplanes the past couple of weeks, Jacob. I'm coming down with a slight cold, so forgive me if I'm not projecting totally clearly. But look, this is one of the worst pieces of legislation that we have seen in a long time. This is the legislation that's directly attacks the American people, everything from health care to pension security. We're talking about some of the topics you want to talk about, how this budget really blocks, nonpartisan efforts to give protections to workers against artificial intelligence. And, these Medicaid cuts is going to really, really have a horrendous effect on the American people. But this budget, the best way to describe this budget, this reconciliation bill, is cruel. It's mean. It's evil. It's disastrous for average, everyday people throughout the United States. What we're seeing is a document developed by the billionaires that's trying to reconstruct our country, going from a democracy to an autocracy, and trying to create a budget by the billionaires to benefit the billionaires. There's no simple way to describe what's taking place in this reconciliation bill. A lot of it is carrying out the objectives of Project 2025, but this is bad news for the American people, and the labor movement is doing everything that we can to bring light to what we're about to see, and doing everything that we can to stop it and to make some modifications to some of the most horrendous portions of this bill.
Speaking of the cruelty, I think the Medicaid cuts are really kind of at the top of the list of the cruel things that this bill seeks to do. And yet, we are on multiple of the stations that we're on are conservative talk radio stations, right? And I have regular guest segments with some of the conservative hosts, and they're like, you're a union guy, you're a labor council president, and all that the Republicans want to do is kick the lazy, non-working people off of Medicaid. That's all they want to do. Why do all of your members work? All of your members of the unions work. Why do you oppose adding quote unquote work requirements on Medicaid? When the people that you represent, generally speaking, work. And I have answers, obviously, to that, but I'm interested in your response. How do you respond? And I'm sure that you get some people, maybe even
absolutely.
People that don't understand that ask you questions in that way. How do you respond when you get that sort of question?
Well, look, these cuts to Medicare, it's going to hurt everybody. This isn't a partisan bill where you're going to have more pain for union members than you're going to have for non-union members or vice versa. I mean, look, the threat of these Medicare cuts is urgent for every community throughout this country. I mean, when you look at in the South, 330 rural hospitals across the country, including in Alabama and across the South, would be forced to close, okay, if these cuts become law. They would strip entire communities of access to emergency rooms, ambulances, and maternity wards, forcing people to travel farther and wait longer for care. I mean, this isn't rhetoric. I mean, this bill has been looked at by every healthcare organization around this country, those pro right, those pro left, and they came up with the same analysis. I mean, this bill is going to hurt our seniors, our newborns. A lot of folks don't understand is Medicare is the primary payer for 63% of nursing home residents and pays for 42% of births in the United States each year. And, the work requirements are actually, it's like smoke and mirrors. It's actually bureaucratic red tape that is designed to make it harder for people to get health care so that members of Congress can, really save a buck for a billionaire tax cut. And the vast majority of people on Medicare, they already work. Okay? The vast majority of people already work, and those who don't work are either caregivers taking care of disabled kids or elderly parents or disabled parents in their families that are disabled and cannot work. And what these provisions does is they add extra red tape and paperwork to the process that will only risk stripping these people out of their life-saving insurance coverage. So, when people approach you about or approach us, and I get asked these questions a lot, just as you do, Jacob, but as people really, really come to understand this bill and come to understand these cuts to Medicare, and they can see that this is just cruel stuff that's going to hurt a vast amount of Americans throughout this country.
One of the another piece of the bill that the Medicaid thing, lots of people are talking about it, and for good reason, because that's probably going to have some of the widest ranging impacts on people. But there is another piece of the bill that is going to have wide ranging impact that is almost going unremarked upon at all, and that's this piece to ban states from doing any AI regulation at all for 10 years. How did this provision even get in there, and how are unions responding to that?
Well, the bill got in there because of the big tech corporations who don't want anything regarding artificial intelligence to be accountable to working people. Through our Tech Institute, through the labor movement around this country, we have really approached this on a nonpartisan basis. Because in all 50 states throughout this country, on the state level, there have been some discussion on how can we protect workers, okay, from being harmed and damaged by artificial intelligence. And in 40 states, they have passed policies and have passed laws and legislation. And in this bill, the legislation or the provisions of this bill is going to eliminate those laws that are already on the books. And as you stated, going to prevent future regulations to protect workers from being put on the books for the next 10 years. And, the whole thing is, the labor movement, we have never been against artificial intelligence. We think it can be a productive mechanism to increase productivity, to provide safe working places. We think if used constructively, okay, that artificial intelligence can be an asset to working people. But, what this piece of legislation is really being lobbied by very heavily by big tech corporations is, they just don't want any accountability to working people. And this bill actually put workers at risk. And we are facing a future in which these AI systems, you know, use the way that the tech companies want to use them. And some corporations, they can track and monitor us and decide where we can live, our workload, and how many co-workers share within our workload, whether or not we could get a job, and even the quality and length of our medical care. This stuff is so intrusive. And that's why, you know, in 40 states, they have passed legislation, bipartisan legislation, I should mention, to try to protect workers and, working people. And, look, regulations that's been put forward, in order to protect workers are common sense. And this funding bill, if passed, would effectively just ban states and local governments from creating safety rules for the next 10 years, as you stated, and stop them from enforcing the bipartisan safety rules that have already been created and passed in 40 states. So, look, the labor movement is committed. We won't let Congress quietly overturn our rights, our jobs, and our safety. And this week, the AFLCIO and 32 of our national unions and labor federations, we called on the Senate to strip this policy from the bill. From mine workers, steel workers, construction trades, to transportation, hospitality workers, arts and industry workers, public, private sector, they're all raising our voice because this is a concern to strip away these protections from working people from this bill and make the American workers throughout this country, union and non-union, suspect to unsafe working conditions, to this unfair intrusion on their lives, on their medical care. And, we think that the legislation does not make any sense and is really, really being pushed by the tech companies to take total control over workers' lives through this artificial intelligence.
Right. It's really concerning and interesting that it's coming from the quote unquote states' rights party. I want to switch topics a little bit here and talk about the immigration, the ICE raids. And our listeners know, I think, that Brother David Huerta was arrested, faces criminal felony charges now. David Huerta, president of the SEIU in California, Service Employees International Union, one of the largest unions in California, for observing an ICE raid. Not obstructing as alleged or anything like that, just observing, as is his First Amendment right, and arrested facing criminal penalties. How have unions and the AFL-CIO specifically responded to these increased ICE raids and the arrest of Brother David Huerta?
Well, first of all, I just want to say to my brother David Huerta that David represents the best of our labor movement. I mean, he's a proud Californian, born and raised in LA County. He's the son of a union member. He has a wife and two sons. And David has dedicated his life to fighting for low-wage immigrant workers. And at the time of his arrest, David was simply exercising his constitutional right to peacefully protest and legally observe ICE activities when he was arrested on June the 6th. And he was doing what unions always do, peacefully practicing solidarity with fellow workers who are under threat. And when he was violently detained in violation of his and all of our constitutional rights and freedoms, there was an urgent call to action for all union members across this country. And we responded. We held protesters throughout the United States, and we are relieved that Davis has been released and reunited with his family. But, as I could quote my sister, April Verrett, the president of SEIU, she said this is about much more than just one man. And thousands of workers remain unjustly detained and separated from their families at this very moment. Immigrant communities are being terrorized by heavy militarized armed forces. So, look, in this labor movement, we never leave a member of our family behind. And just as we stood up for Kilmar Abrego Garcia and David Herrera, we will not back down when our members and our families are targeted. And their releases are proof that pressure works. And we need to keep that pressure up. We are getting a tremendous response from all of our 63 affiliate unions who feel that these immigration policies are meant to instill fear by tearing apart families and endangering working people, our friends, our communities, and our union members. And these sort of policies have no place in our government. So we're not going to be quiet. We're going to continue to speak out on this issue as the president continued to increase his assault against undocumented workers throughout this country. You know, he just increased the activity of ICE in cities and rural communities as well as inner cities around this country. And the labor movement is going to continue to increase our pushback and our activism against these threats against workers around this country.
The AFL-CIO has now, for a number of years, probably even a few decades, been very supportive of immigrant workers, making the case that the interests of immigrant workers and non-immigrant workers are so much more aligned than they are disaligned. And there are a lot of people that have difficulty grasping that too. What is the AFL-CIO's case for why, my interest as somebody born and raised in Alabama whose family has been in Alabama since, for like 100 years or more, why is it in my interest to stand together with immigrant workers, documented and undocumented?
Well, the whole thing about immigration is, first of all, we believe in common sense immigration reform and pathways to citizenship. I mean, besides Native Americans, all of our families immigrated, some willingly and some unwillingly, but we all here in America as immigrants, more or less. And the people who live in our communities, people we work with on the job sites every day, these are people who pay their taxes, they work hard, they're here taking care of their families. And, look, I think that the immigration system in the United States is broken. It don't work. And we, believe that, we could have and reform our immigration laws to make sure that people who are here on the work visas, people who are here seeking asylum, we already have laws on the books that those laws can be enforced in a way that does not disrupt families and does not discriminate against people, throughout this country. What we see now is, the harassment, if we're going to be frank about this, I think that people in Alabama and people throughout the country ought to be concerned because now we're viewing this as a lot of this harassment by ICE agents is being perpetrated against people who are lawfully U.S. citizens. People who were born in the country and their only fault as far as ICE is concerned, they happen to be black or brown or Asian, this is literally tearing people apart. And we think that there should be entitled, all of these people who have been rounded up by ICE should be entitled to due process. that's what you do in a democracy. If people should be given due process before they are deported to really exercise the rights that we offer here in a democracy in the United States and have for years. So we think that everyone should be concerned, whether you're in Alabama, whether you're in Mississippi, whether you're in Chicago, whether you're in New York. We think that everyone should be concerned about the lack of due process, about the unlawful detentions, about the attack on not just immigrants, but American citizens who may be here peacefully, and in a lot of these cases are here legally. So we need to make sure that we are uh, promoting common sense immigration reform. The labor movement stands strongly for a pathway to citizenship. And we think that the president's direction is wrong, it's destructive, and it's tearing apart families. And that's why everybody should be against a legal system that works and that's going to be made more effective.
Right. You mentioned Alabama. I want to talk about Alabama and the broader South as our final topic with you. Being from the South and having a radio program that centers around the South, organizing the South has been a very important thing for me and something that I think about a lot. Why does the AFL-CIO as an international organization think that the organizing in the South as a particular region of one particular country is important work?
Well, it's very important because sometimes corporations think that they can get away with paying Southern workers less than what they're owed. And by forming a union, we can work together to fight for fair pay and quality health care and job security. And, we've had some inspiring wins across the South in the last few years. And you've talked about them earlier during your report. But in 2024, the International Union of Electrical Workers um, of America, members of IUE, CWA, members who work at New Flyer in Anniston, Alabama, they ratified their first union contract. And they want pay increases ranging from 15 to 38% by 2026. They've negotiated restrictions on forced overtime. They negotiated more vacation and paid time off and better parental leave and so many other huge victories. And look, organizing unions and negotiating for the dignity that workers deserve isn't just possible in the South. It's happening right now. Okay, it's not impossible to win in the South. Okay, so we need to keep that in mind. And there's so many examples out there. Bluebird manufacturing workers in Macon, Georgia. They want a contract with the profit sharing system, sharing in the wealth that they help to create every day. AT&T workers went on strike against 9 southern states to make sure that management bargained fairly, and they won their new agreement. So, look, the South and workers in the South are no different than workers in the North and in the West and in the East. Workers in the South deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and corporations think that they could separate us by moving their corporations. I used to, I come out of the manufacturing sector, and the threat was always shipping our jobs and moving manufacturing plants overseas. That's still a threat, but what's become a much more bigger threat is moving jobs to the South where they feel that they can't exploit workers. And we're changing that, and we're going to continue to change that because workers in the South are, strong contributors to the industrial revolution here in America. Workers in the South are no different, as I stated, from workers everywhere else. And they're starting to stand up, and we're going to stand up with them and make sure that we achieve collective bargaining for every worker around this country, including the South, that wants to join a union. We're going to fight for that right.
Fred Redmond, Secretary-Treasurer of the AFL-CIO, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Jacob, and thank you for everything that you're doing, spreading the word about unionism, and we really appreciate the work that you're doing.
All right, Brother Redmond, appreciate your time. You have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
We're going to take a break, and we will be right back with Boss Watch.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell.
The Laborers International Union of North America, IBEW Local 366, is proudly recruiting North Alabama local workers to work construction and nuclear plant maintenance. If you're interested, please contact April at our training center to start the process at 256-904-1753. No experience is needed. We offer free training, but you must be able to pass a background check and a drug test. Local hiring that grows our community with good-paying jobs that have benefits is our mission. Live better, work union, Local 366, feel the power. The Valley Labor Report is also supported by the Communication Workers of America. Learn more at cwa-union.org.
Support for this program is provided by the International Association for Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local Lodge 44 in Decatur, Alabama. Learn more at IAMAW44.org.
The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by the United Automobile, Aerospace, and Agricultural Implement Workers of America, better known as the UAW. They are one of the largest and most diverse unions in North America, with members in virtually every sector of the economy. UAW-represented workplaces range from multinational corporations, small manufacturers, and state and local governments, to colleges and universities, hospitals, and private nonprofit organizations. The UAW has more than 400,000 active members and more than 580,000 retired members in the United States, Canada, and Puerto Rico. You can learn more about the UAW and join at uaw.org. The Valley Labor Report is also sponsored by Labor Notes. Labor Notes is a media and organizing project that has been the voice of union activists who want to put the movement back in the labor movement since 1979. You can learn more about Labor Notes at labornotes.org.
The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have stood with the working people of Alabama for over 40 years, providing skilled legal representation for your workplace injury claims. When you are injured on the job, it can be a scary time. The attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs have the experience to guide you through the process to make sure that you and your family are properly taken care of and your rights are protected. If you need help, call the attorneys at Maples, Tucker & Jacobs at 855-617-9333 or visit online at www.mtnj.com. No representation is made that the quality of legal services provided is greater than the quality of legal services provided by other law firms.
Support for this program also comes from the Mid-South Council of Retail, Wholesale, and Department Store Union. Learn more at rwdsu.info.
Union leaders, do you want a powerful website and mobile app built just for your members? The Union Active system, created by Unions America, makes it easy to share news and documents, send alerts, and keep your members engaged anytime, anywhere. Trusted by thousands of unions, Union Active streamlines communication so you can focus on what matters most, your members. With real-time updates, secure messaging, and custom features built for unions, you'll keep your members informed and engaged 24/7. Get Union Active today. Visit unionactive.com to learn more. Union Active, the ultimate website and communication system for unions.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell.
Labor creates all wealth. All wealth should go to labor, and you are listening to the Valley Labor Report. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate you hanging out with us. If you've got anything to add, you can leave us a voicemail at 844-899-TVLR, 844-899-8857.
Our call in a few minutes when we start overtime.
Exactly, at 11 a.m. Central Time, 12 noon Eastern for our folks in Chattanooga. We will be ending the first half of the show and going online, Facebook and YouTube, and we will be taking calls. We are a little light on the programming, so we'll have plenty of time for calls in the second half if you want to call in, so we would welcome that. Appreciate everybody hanging out with us in the chat. Mark Jr. says, a proud member of UWUA Local 423 here, Utility Workers Union of America. That's what UWUA stands for, pretty sure. Electrabuzz says, I work in nuclear. It's a fantastic career. DL Cindero says, unionism in the South is one tough fight. Actually, that's true of unionism anywhere, indeed. Electrabuzz says, great speaker. Thank you, Fred. Another user says, Smithfield Foods, legendary win when workers organize. Smithfield Foods has there's a great documentary about that on Means TV, which you can subscribe to with our promo code TVLR. That's means.tv, promo code TVLR, and you can get 20% off your monthly subscription or your first month or your year. And you can search for the documentary Union Time about the Smithfield union election. Vonda, president of the Nashville Labor Council, said, glad to see Secretary-Treasurer Redmond on this morning. Leanne says, everybody's sick today. Yeah, both of our guests today were sick, but they still made it through. Isn't that so sweet of them? I appreciate their willingness to power through it for us. So, yeah, appreciate everybody hanging out. David in the chat said, met Fred at a USW conference in Detroit last year. Okay, very cool. Very cool. USW 1944 in Canada here.
We love our Canadian siblings who
we
tune in. We really appreciate that. It's kind of funny, but we love it. So thanks for joining.
Indeed. Let's get to Boss Watch, folks. Every week, bosses break the law, endanger their workers, steal from their employees, and we're going to tell you about it. Over in Florida, the U.S. Department of Labor's Occupational Safety and Health Administration cited 2 event production companies following an inspection concerning an October 2024 employee fatality. Stage FX Incorporated and James Thomas Productions were cited with serious violations for allegedly failing to maintain structural stability during the erection of a stage and failing to provide proper employee training on the associated hazards. James Thomas Productions paid $19,860 to address the violations, while Stage FX has contested the findings before the Independent Occupational Safety and Health Review Commission. McKenna Schuler included more details in her reporting on the tragedy for the Orlando Weekly. Recommend checking that out. In Alabama, Transtar rail worker Michael Dwayne Townsend, 39, died from blunt force injuries after being hit by a rail car in an accident that occurred around 11 p.m. on Monday last week in Fairfield, Alabama. AL.com reports that he leaves behind 4 children and that only a year ago his wife passed away.
Wow.
A GoFundMe for the 4 children has raised $36,000 as of Saturday morning, June 21st. If you would like to donate, you can do so by Googling the title of the fundraiser, Help Michael's Children After Tragedy GoFundMe. If you Google that, it'll be the first link that comes up. You can also follow the link if you're reading the newsletter. Railroad Workers United, RWU, a cross-craft caucus of union railroad workers, sent out a notice about his death and included some more details, some more information that AL.com didn't have, like a statement from the company Transtar, which said, we are investigating the incident and are cooperating with investigations by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration and the National Transportation Safety Board. Due to the nature of the ongoing investigations, we will not be commenting further on the incident. RWU also noted that Transtar, which operates 7 railroads serving U.S. steel facilities, was sold by the steelmaker to Fortress Transportation in 2021. This is an outsourcing thing. This has been something we've been coming back to a lot this show. Its Fairfield Southern Railroad provides in-plant rail service for U.S. Steel's Fairfield Works, located approximately 10 miles west of Birmingham. RWU encouraged people to double their resolve to build a safer workplace where such tragedies are not so commonplace, and to commit yourself to following up on how and why our brother was killed. What is the behind-the-scenes story? What role did unsafe conditions, including short staffing, crew fatigue, and inadequate training or deferred maintenance or other factors play in this worker's death? They also encourage folks to get involved in the national movement against Blame the Worker behavior-based safety programs. Help build real union-based safety committees and programs that focus on hazard elimination and do not ignore the underlying cause of accidents, injuries, and fatalities sustained on the job. For more information, see the RWU webpage entitled Oppose Behavior-Based Safety. You can also take part in the RWU annual Railroad Workers Memorial Day each April 28th. For more information, you can see RWU webpage Fallen Rails. Workers die on the job every day in the United States. We just talked about 2 of those stories. 100 workers every single week. Frustratingly, most of those deaths are preventable, but they are often not even investigated due to underfunding at OSHA, and often the community doesn't even know what's happened. Even though OSHA is more hamstrung than it's ever been before, there is sometimes a small news story whenever somebody dies at work, because it is such a terrible thing to happen in a community. On the Confined Space newsletter set up by Jordan Barab, a former OSHA official, they compile as many news stories on worker deaths as they can find every week. In addition to this newsletter, they regularly host commentary and analysis pieces about labor and workplace safety. You can find it all at jordanbarab.com/confined space. This week, they found 16 stories of deaths on the job, including 8 from the South. A couple of lowlights in Parker County, Texas. 2 workers died after getting stuck in an underground water tank in Parker County on Friday, according to the firefighters and the sheriff's office. Initial call details indicated that the 2 men who had been performing maintenance on the tank could not be reached by coworkers. The men were unresponsive as crews tried to rescue them, authorities said. Parker County ESD-1 said in a news release that its crews were called shortly before 5 p.m. to the scene, where the workers were inside the concrete tank in a below-grade space or trench. In Riceville, North Carolina, a member of the Riceville Volunteer Fire Department died in a line-of-duty accident, according to a June 14th Buncombe County news release. The release said the death occurred during a training exercise serious accident involving an all-terrain vehicle in Montreat. 2 other members of the department were transported for medical treatment, according to the news release. Violet Caramella, a firefighter and advanced emergency medical technician for the Riceville Volunteer Fire Department, was involved in the accident. Caramella, who had been with the Riceville Department for a year and also served with the Skyland Fire Department, succumbed to her injuries despite life-saving efforts from fellow firefighters and emergency personnel. We'll wrap up with Union Busters. This segment of Boss Watch covers national updates and is sponsored by Labor Lab. Labor Lab is an employer watchdog organization. They are committed to safeguarding the right to organize through unions, collective bargaining, and mutual aid. They do this by combing through reports that Union Busters are required to file with the Department of Labor. Here are the new filings from this week. Premier Brands of America in New York hired Johan Pena. Pena apparently used to be an organizer for Unite Here. Workers did lose that union election 15-25. Canadian Solar U.S. Modular Manufacturing Corporation in Texas also hired Johan Pena. In addition, the following filings were amended. JV Employee Solutions amended their LM20 for Corewell Health to add a compensation rate, and MSC Labor Relations and Legislative Consulting amended their filing for Clocka FMGM to add their written contract as an attachment. As a reminder, Due to a lack of enforcement, some labor relations consultants may disregard the law and fail to report their activities to the U.S. Department of Labor. Therefore, it's crucial for organizers and workers to report suspected persuader activity to the U.S. Department of Labor's Office of Labor Management Standards, OLMS. It's crucial for organizers and workers to report that behavior. You can reach the department via email at olms-public@dol.gov by calling 202-693-0123 or by contacting your nearest OLMS office. If you need assistance with that, you can contact Labor Lab at contact@laborlab.us. We've got a few more minutes left in the program, and I wanted to give Adam a couple of minutes to talk about some more of his experience with privatization, particularly in the education sector. Adam used to be a school teacher and worked for the Teachers Association for some time in Alabama, so he's got a lot of experience with this. When you heard about this story, what were some of the things that came to mind from your history?
Yeah, I remember some of the scandals that, this sort of privatization embroiled Huntsville City Schools in. Because, as I said earlier, the only results you get from this sort of outsourcing is going to be inferior services, right? In large part due to the high turnover of the staff, but also other reasons as well. So you get inferior services, and in the long run, your costs go up. And here's one example. At one time, the school district wanted to change contractors. There had been a lot of complaints about the company that handled custodial services. And, of course, myself and others were arguing we should just hire, directly. The district should directly employ these employees like they used to. When they tried to change companies, the company actually sued them and tried to take them to court over the contract dispute. And so it ended up costing even more money to get out from underneath, this company, and they had to pay, the school board attorney to deal with this mess. And, something else that I recall is that several of these contracting companies just so happen to be significant donors to the school board races. So some of the very same school board members who voted on these contracts and turned over what used to be state-funded or at least locally funded government employees, right? Public sector jobs. What used to be public sector jobs turned over to these private companies, and some of the very same board members who voted on those contracts and were for those things just so happen to be getting significant contributions from some of those companies and their CEOs for their re-elections, right? So those are the sorts of things you introduce when you start dealing with these outside entities. And it really is a direct attack on the workers themselves. They're going to face inferior health care. They're going to face inferior retirement, right? A custodian or groundskeeper who works at the University of North Alabama or Huntsville City Schools or other educational agencies, they have access to the teacher's retirement system. They have a pension, an actual defined benefit pension. And at groundskeeper or custodian wages, it's not going to be a huge jackpot when they retire, but it's a guaranteed retirement income for their years of service. They have paid sick leave and paid personal leave. These are really important. And they have affordable health care, relatively affordable. It could be better, of course, but all things considered, education employees in Alabama have relatively decent health care compared to many in the private sector. So these are direct attacks on these workers, and what the folks on campus are going to experience is that high turnover, the inferior services, and then it's going to be a matter of everyone passing the buck, right? That's one of the other problems with this subcontracting is everyone passes responsibility, and accountability for the actual work itself becomes that much harder. So it's a real disaster. And in most agencies that have experimented with this over the years have started to rehire people back into the district because they realize It's more effective. They get better work. They get better workers. And it really is a win-win for everybody.
Yeah. That's going to be it for our first half of the show. If you want to keep listening, you can find us on Facebook or YouTube at The Valley Labor Report. We got a great second half lined up for you. We're going to be talking about Juneteenth, how Trump wants you to work more than you do already. We'll be talking about the latest on the U.S. Steel Nippon deal, taking your calls, 844-899-TVLR, and more. So find us on Facebook and YouTube. If you don't, then we'll see you next week. All right, folks, we are off of the radio now. Appreciate everybody staying tuned. We're going to take a break. We're going to be right back.
Come on, you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell. How the good old union has come in here to dwell. Go to Harlan County, there is no neutral there. You'll either be a union man or a thug party explorer. Which side are you on? 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 Come on, you poor workers, good news
Callers from the call-in studio web interface.
how the good old union has come in here to dwell. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
This is Overtime, a production of the Valley Labor Report, the largest union talk radio and online news outfit in the South, coming to you from the heart of the Tennessee Valley and the Spice Radio studios in Huntsville, Alabama. We are run by working people and for working people in the South and all over the country. My name is Jacob Morrison. My co-host is Adam Keller. We appreciate you spending some time with us, and if you'd like to call in, the phone number is 844-899-TVLR. That's 844-899-8857.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, we do air live on radio the first half of the program. We air live on WVNN, which is the right-wing talk radio station in Huntsville, Athens area. And so that's every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Central Time. And then we go into this half of the program, Overtime, which starts at 11 a.m. Central. Airs online on YouTube, Facebook, as well as Means TV. And so welcome to all of our listeners and viewers from Means TV. We also air live on Chattanooga Radio on WGOW from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. And we did get our start on WVNN, which is ironically the birthplace of Sean Hannity and home to all sorts of reactionary propaganda that we personally find objectionable. But we think it's important to get a different perspective out there to multiple audiences. And we're happy that a portion of the show is replayed during the week on WZZA, which is a historic black radio station in Northwest Alabama out in the Shoals area. And we also replay on WHIV, which is a community radio station in New Orleans. And I believe they got their start really as community health centered. So we released the full episode on Spotify, Apple, the various podcasting apps. So whatever your preferred platform, preferred medium, if you're more of a listen on YouTube Live, or if you like to catch the segments, throughout the week we release clips of the show as standalone videos on YouTube and Facebook. So if it's a specific interview or a specific segment that you were interested in catching, you can do that. It also makes it easy to share with folks. And I want to really encourage people. We love it if you can donate to this project because it is a grassroots media project and we have to raise funds to be on commercial radio and to sustain operations of this project. But something everyone can do, regardless of your resources, is share our material. Give us good reviews. So on those platforms, those podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, those kind of apps, go in and give us a good review. That takes, 5 seconds, and it really does help. If there are clips that you enjoyed or interviews that you really enjoyed, share those links with folks, on your social media or email it on to, folks in your local, folks that are in your network. We really appreciate that. It's word of mouth and just good old-fashioned everyday folks talking to other everyday folks. That's how we spread the word. We don't have like an advertising budget. We don't necessarily like promote the show through paid advertising or anything like that in terms of going out and about paying for Facebook ads or running commercials on TV or anything like that. We don't have that kind of budget, and that's not been our forte. So we just rely on everyday folks, union members, non-union members, people who have an interest in working class politics, particularly here in the South. So I really do appreciate all of you who subscribe, all of you who like, all of you participate in our live chats, all of you who call or leave voicemails. All that kind of audience engagement is really helpful. It's not just helpful to spread the word, but it's helpful for us, right? I mean, we've been doing this project. Jacob started this 5 years ago, over 5 years ago at this point. I joined in the spring of 2021. And so I've been doing it over 4 years now, and we do it because we're trying to make a difference. We're trying to uplift a message of solidarity and worker power. And if you really appreciate that, if you find some value in it, do let us know. We want to make sure we're not just talking to nobody, right? So if you think it's important that we have our own media that is of, by, and for the Southern working class, please do consider supporting us however you can. Please share with your coworkers, your friends, family, neighbors, anyone you think might get some kind of interest out of this. And we know there's a lot of good causes out there to support, especially these days. And, you know, our audience, it's working folks, all right, with limited incomes. But if you do find value in our project and you can chip in a couple bucks, it really would mean a lot to us. You can go to tvlr.fm/donate to do that. We also have a Patreon if you prefer to donate that way. I know a lot of people already subscribe to other programs through Patreon. You know, the big perk you get through Patreon is commercial-free podcasts. So if that's of interest to you, feel free to give us a couple bucks that way. Our normal donation link through the website is actually a union service, right? It's a union service that we use to process our payments. And that's something that we really try to make a priority here in this project. Whatever we do, we want to use union labor. So our merch that you can find, which I highly encourage you to check out at tvlr.fm. You can see that we use union-made materials like union-printed shirts, right? That's what we do. We, you know, if we're spending money, we try to patronize union shops wherever that's possible. When we do a big print job of copies, right, we're going to use a union printer. So we do that to try to practice our values, and we really appreciate all the support from folks that makes that possible. We rely on a combination of advertising and grassroots donations. And so we appreciate the unions and other organizations that have been, you know, willing to express confidence in this project by sponsoring advertisements and helping to sustain the project. We really, really appreciate all of you individuals out there, whether it's, you know, $2 a month or $20 a month, whatever, you know, is in your budget. Whatever you're chipping in, and the folks who chip in, you know, every now and then, once a year, whatever it is, it means a lot to us. We really do appreciate it as how we're able to sustain this project for going on 5 years, over 5 years now. It's how we've been able to hopefully make an impact. And, you know, we talked about the United Campus workers earlier in the program. And I'll never forget going to a Poor People's Campaign event in Montgomery a year or two ago. And the United Campus workers were there. They had a good-sized contingent. And some folks actually recognized me from the Valley Labor Report. And they actually had new people join the union because they found out about it on our show. Right? So even if we accomplish nothing else, moving forward with this project, I'm proud to know that we have new union members in the state of Alabama because of this project. And we've heard from various other people that they've learned something, they have been educated in some way, or they just appreciate the community and appreciate knowing that there are just a couple Southern Union guys out here trying to preach the good word of solidarity, trying to preach the good word of worker power, of coming together as working people, and the power and potential we have when we do that. So thanks again, everyone, for all that support. I wanted to take a moment to make sure, especially we have new listeners and viewers on Means TV, but, you know, whether you've been here for the long haul or you're relatively new to the project, that's a little bit about what we do, why we do it. You know, this is a passion project for us, and we really do think that we as working people have to tell our story. Because the media is not set up to celebrate workers organizing and workers fighting the boss and workers coming together, transcending divisions to build unity and strength. So that's why we do what we do, and we really appreciate everyone tuning in today and moving forward.
Let's talk about Juneteenth. Juneteenth is now a federal holiday, has been for a few years, and not everybody gets that day off. I think probably most people don't get that day off, just like most people don't get a lot of federal holidays off. But some people do, and some people are really upset about it. Let's play clip 3.
Okay, everybody, a lot of people are going to be saying Happy Juneteenth. It should not be a federal holiday, and I'm on my way to work. Have a good day.
So courageous and sacrificial. Isn't that so cool that this guy, who literally his whole job is to talk, is going into work on Juneteenth? He's so brave and hardworking. I really don't understand the consternation around the Juneteenth holiday. It's a cool holiday, and it's cool to get more time off, right? You know, I mean, we have in Alabama literal Confederate holidays where state employees still get the days off. And I think that most state employees, if the choices were only between we keep Confederate holiday or we don't and we have to go to work, they would probably say, well, let's keep the holidays. But, you know, I mean, there would, I think a lot of people would also say, well, let's just change them to something that's like worth celebrating. And what could be more worth celebrating than the emancipation of enslaved people in this country? I mean, most people recognize that slavery in this country was something like the original sin of the United States. And so the country releasing itself from that and ending slavery is a cool thing that we should be proud of. And the story of of Juneteenth, of the people in Galveston getting the word, and that's the day that they got the word that the Emancipation Proclamation was signed. You know, I mean, it's a cool story. It's a good thing to celebrate, and people deserve more time off, right? And so I think the fight for Juneteenth is winnable on all of those grounds. On all of those grounds, right? It's a good holiday. It's something that we should celebrate. It's something that we don't celebrate right now. You know, outside of Juneteenth, there's not another federal holiday dedicated to the freeing of the slaves. So that's a good thing. And also, people deserve more time off of work. But Trump seems to, and most conservatives, when they talk about Juneteenth, they don't talk about it. Typically, it's not like, oh, you have to work more, right? Because that's not really a good selling point. You know, I mean, when Democrats in Alabama talk about, we need to get rid of the Confederate holidays, nobody is going around and saying, because we have to get rid of the Confederate holidays because state employees in Alabama need to work more, right? Nobody's saying that because it's dumb. That would be a dumb thing to say. Not politically expedient, not true. It wouldn't be good. But, and so most conservatives don't take that tact with Juneteenth, right? When most conservatives attack Juneteenth, they do it like, oh, it's woke. It's, I'm triggered by black people. Like, that's the argument. But Trump seems to have taken the least popular possible position on Juneteenth, which is not to attack it on the woke of it all, but to attack it on the idea that it's a holiday, that it's a day off work. Let's listen to this truth from Donald Trump. Quote, "Too many non-working holidays in America. It is costing our country billions of dollars to keep all of these businesses closed. The workers don't want it either. Soon we'll end up having a holiday for every once working day of the year. It must change if we are going to make America great again." That is crazy, right? I mean, that's bizarre. I mean, it's crazy to attack Juneteenth because of woke, because celebrating the end of slavery is woke. That's crazy. But attacking it on the idea that people in the United States don't work enough. Like, that's actually the argument. Donald Trump thinks that you don't work enough. And it's also just, factually not true. We have 11 federal holidays now, most of which for most people are not paid, right? But we have 11 federal holidays, and that's like a normal amount. In the UK, they have 9. In France, they have 11. In Spain, they have 14. In Germany, they have 13. In Chile, they have 15. In South Korea, they have 15. In Japan, they have 15. In Israel, they have 10. So it's like we have a normal amount of holidays. What do we not have a normal amount of, though? There is something that's related that we do not have a normal amount of, and that is minimum days of paid leave. Right? Most countries that have industrialized mandate as a part of the law, just like we have in the United States with minimum wages or overtime, right? It is mandatory in the United States. Generally speaking, if you employ somebody, you have to pay them at least $7.25 an hour. It is mandatory in the United States, generally speaking, that if you work somebody for more than 40 hours in a week, you have to pay them time and 1/2 of their base hourly rate. Okay? So just like we have those laws, in most other countries, they have minimum days of annual leave. In the United Kingdom, they have 28 days statutory minimum paid leave. In Germany, they have 20 days. In France, they have 20 days. In Spain, they have 22. In Chile, they have 15. South Korea, they have 15. Australia, they have 20. Japan, 10. Israel, 11. Canada, 10. Mexico has 6. If you're an employer in Mexico, you are mandated to give your employees 6 days of paid vacation leave. But in America, that number is 0. 0 days, right? And we just talked about University of North Alabama privatizing their groundskeeping staff. Their new company is only going to give them 5 vacation days, right? So Americans work way too much. Now most people in the United States do get some amount of paid leave, right? I mean, just because it's not in the law that an employer has to give you paid leave, most employers do give you some. Even these evil vampires who are going to be taking over the contract for groundskeeping work at UNA, even those blood-sucking ghouls are giving their employees 5 days a year, right? And they're not legally obligated to do that. Okay, so then let's ask the question: how many hours of work do people in the United States on average perform per year? Wikipedia has a list of these numbers, and it's coming from Wikipedia. So but Wikipedia is generally, people dog on Wikipedia too much, and it's generally pretty good. So Americans work. Let's see, where is the United States? Almost 1,800 hours per year. So that's something on the order of like 4 weeks of leave, generally speaking, or 4 weeks of not working, right? I mean, some of that can be unpaid leave. But 1,765 hours of work is the average in the United States. In Germany, that number, the average number of hours worked per year, is 1,353. That is 400 hours less. That is 10 weeks less. German workers have 2.5 more months off per year than workers in the United States do. And you can go down the list. I mean, this is all of the European countries have way more time off than people in the United States. Denmark, they only work 1,400 hours per year. Norway, 1,417. The Netherlands, 1,430. Iceland, 1,493. France, 1,514. Luxembourg, 1,518. And on United Kingdom, 1,670. Canada is still, they're getting closer to us. They have 1,696, so they have about a week and a half more off than we do in the United States. And that's not just, we work 400 hours more than workers in Germany. But that means, that is, people don't realize how much time we sacrifice at the altar of capital, right? I mean, we are literally selling parts of our life that we will never get back to a company for money so that the company can make profits off of us, so that, generally speaking, somebody at the top can make ungodly, demonic amounts of money. That time is time that the company could afford to pay us more for and give us more time off for. And that time is time that we could be spending with our family, spending raising our children. It's time that we could be spending learning a hobby. It's time that we could be spending getting a skill to maybe become an entrepreneur and start our own business or something like that, right? I mean, there's so many knock-on effects that spending so much of our time at work does that is poisonous to us as individuals and to our society. And so it is just so bizarre. It is just so bizarre that Trump is choosing this terrain to fight on about Juneteenth, right? Like, nobody made him do it. Like, a union thug did not go into Trump's office and hold a baseball bat to him menacingly and say, you have to tell people that you want them to work more because that's going to be good for us, because it's going to be so easy for us to message against this as a proposal, right? Nobody made him do this. He just did it. He just did it. Because actually that's what he thinks, right? I mean, he's, one of these capitalists. I mean, a real estate guy. I mean, one of the worst kinds of capitalists, right? I mean, at least like the Fords, at least they produced something, right? I mean, the real estate people, they really are just leeches, At least Ford, Boeing, these people, like, there's a thing that they have produced at the end of it. But people like Donald Trump, they just leech. They just insert themselves into a transaction to take a cut. And he thinks that people that actually produce, that actually do work, that we have it too good, right? The person who works at Mercedes, the person who works at GM, the person who works at Honda, Hyundai, Stellantis, Ford, you have it too good, you have too much time off, and you should have to work more. Too many non-working holidays in America. The workers don't want it either. I mean, what workers is he talking to? Soon we'll end up having a holiday for every once working day of the year. It must change if we are going to make America great again. There was somebody on Twitter that mentioned that one of the policy platforms of Bernie Sanders when he was running for president was to add like 5 more federal holidays or something like that, and that it was a really popular idea. People think you should have more time off. And we should. And also, Juneteenth being in the summer, that helps even out the number of holidays, right? Because we got a bunch of holidays in like the fall and winter, but not as much in the spring and summer. So we need more holidays in the summer to help kind of even out the holiday stuff. So we need, not only should we keep Juneteenth, it's a good thing to celebrate the freeing of the slaves, and it's also good that we have more time off of work. It is good that we have to spend less time sacrificing our lives to capitalists. That's a good thing. It is a good for people, for individuals, and for our society. Really bad what Trump is doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right to point to the disparity in paid time off between countries. I mean, it's just absolutely asinine to think that American workers have it too easy. Yeah. That we have too much time off. It is just not borne out by the facts at all. And, we are always told that the United States is the greatest country on earth, that we're lucky to be here. We should be grateful to be Americans.
Right.
And, let's look at it. Doesn't seem like a really great deal when you compare paid time off, when you look at, parental leave, and when you look at just in general, the working hours that we have to put in compared to other countries, it's really, it's dire.
Yes. Yeah. Bad. It's bad. Some folks in the chat. Adam says DJT's never worked a day in his life, never dug a ditch, never flipped a burger, never carried roofing shingles, never done any work. Quirky Geek Girl says the thing that really boggles my mind is that Canada's had paternity leave since the 1970s. The U.S. still doesn't have it. Yeah, it's really bad. User says, I used to be interested in medicine. It was expected that you work 80 plus hours a week with a salary of $30,000 in your starting years. Then the big money comes, but physicians get only 1 to 2 days off bi-weekly. Yeah, I mean, it's bad.
Is that even good for the patients?
No.
Right?
Yeah,
that I know how I am after I've been working more than 40 hours a week. I wouldn't trust myself making life and death decisions necessarily for other people. Yeah, that's really not cool. I mean, it's just not good for anyone involved. It's not good for the doctors. Yeah, I understand they'll make some good money down the road, but at what cost? And, at a real sacrifice to their health and their families, if they can even have much of a family, at that time in their life. But yeah, how is that helpful to have stressed out, tired, exhausted, unhealthy people doing important jobs? It's not good for anyone. And, something that is on my mind all the time is that in the 1930s, during the massive union upsurge, during the fight for the New Deal, we came really close to getting a 30-hour work week. Like, really close to that. And how much better off would we be if we could do that? And of course, at the time, they were facing a lot of unemployment, and the idea was, well, if there's not enough jobs, let's spread the work around more.
Right.
And, I think that is a sort of thinking, the big picture thinking we need to embrace again. And, something I appreciated about UAW and Sean Fain in their recent, relatively recent contract fight with the Big Three was that emphasis on reducing working hours. We shouldn't have to work as much, right? Like, why can't we survive off 30 hours? It's really, it's time to move forward. I mean, we don't have to do this anymore. We don't have to have people working 80 hours a week. It's insane.
Yeah. Quirky Geek Girl says they could replace the Confederate holidays in Alabama with a day to celebrate Rosa Parks, but I doubt that would happen. We do have the Alabama officially celebrates Martin Luther King Day as MLK/Robert E. Lee Day. Which is insane.
Yeah, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Juneteenth just now became a state holiday. And my recollection was it took a white Republican from a rural area to actually get that legislation across the finish line. So, it's not a great situation. There's always a legacy here in the South and in Alabama of celebrating the Confederacy, which is just absolutely obscene.
It's obscene, obviously, and it's obscene because of the times that Confederate monument building increased. But it's also if you actually, and this is how you know that for so many people it's not actually about heritage or honoring people or anything like that, because Robert E. Lee wanted you not to do that. He even said at the end of the Civil War, we should not be making monuments to the Confederacy because we don't need to increase divisions. We need to focus on unity or whatever. If you actually think that Robert E. Lee was an honorable person and you want to honor him, you would stop talking about him so much. Adam in the chat says, as a suggestion, overtime should be double time with double benefits paid. Yeah, there are some union contracts that have stuff like that, double time. And in some cases you can have things like triple time too, actually. Right. Which is really cool. So.
Yeah, I know. There are good union contract protections that you can get. Including protections for the day, because sometimes people think, oh, well, I worked a 14-hour shift. Well, how did you do that? You're not allowed to do that, are you? I'm like, Yeah, you are. They'll let you work as long as you want to work.
Yeah.
As long as you're made to work.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a union and you have collective bargaining, or even if you don't have collective bargaining, but you have union power, hopefully you can win some provisions that protect you, such as, overtime or double time after 8 hours or after midnight or things like that really can at least try to compensate you for the sacrifice that you're making.
Doodle a Cupcake in the chat says, it's interesting because recently in the last 20 years or so, the idea to fix the overstressed and overworked doctor was to create nurses who could diagnose, treat, and work on their own. And that's how nurse practitioners started and how physician assistants started. Now they have the exact same issue, little to no pay, crazy hours, and so specialized they have months of a wait list. Interesting. I hadn't been checking that for real. We got a caller on the line. Caller from a 256 area code. 256 area code, what's your name and where are you calling from?
This is Dwayne, press secretary, and calling from Morgan County. Hey, Jacob.
Dwayne.
Hey, Adam.
What's on your mind?
How you guys doing? Well, I was going to tell you, I've decided that I'm going to wait till early November when it's the last day to register to see if anybody else runs against the only person running on the Republican Party, to see if I'm going to join it there and let the powers that be see if residency really works or not for him. And of course, it would I would think that what you do there is you'd go to Florida and see if there's any homesteading that's been done there that would disqualify any homesteading done here, if you follow my drill. But yeah. I was wanting to say, though, in regard to like what both of your callers were kind of talking about in like the whole philosophical underlying thing here, okay, guys? You know that one of my main things, if not the main thing throughout the years that I've been a proponent of, was helping the mentally challenged when Governor Riley closed down the mental health facilities, all of them in the state. And these persons were just families weren't told what day they were going to be released. The majority of them had no home to go to, no church people to help them, and they were just let out beside Bryce's, beside Lurleen B. Wallace Center, and in order to just sustain themselves, because they couldn't have a job. They were doctor-ordered, bedridden, doctor-ordered to stay in the bed, mental facility people put out in our state. And they went to stores or whatever, stole to be able to eat, slept in somebody's barn, didn't even have any funds to even bond out of jail, just didn't know what to do with them. And eventually, after 3 strikes and being in the jails for a couple of years, they went to prison where they were harmed terribly. And to this day, for their own protection and for years, they have been in isolated cells. Now, here's what I want to get at, y'all. I want you to think about this. Us, our regular working day people, do not give any thought to what is happening there with these persons in a cell that may not even have anything, even a light in it. And we go about our day without thinking about it very much. Now, I want you to think about this. As we are doing that, these persons that are becoming trillionaires are treating us as we are treating those. Have you got me? And a way to stop this is for us to become the empathizing persons that we want them to be. Have you got me there, guys? We need to put ourselves where our mouths are. We need to do things for the weakest of us ourselves, because in comparison, we have those who are in a position that I just described that you can't get much worse at. And I went on conservative radio, and it took me a while because they said, "Oh, they should have jobs. They should do this. They should do that." But when I did actually convince them that these persons were unable to, they finally said, "Well, Dwayne, you're right." And that's how I got anybody to even listen. So, and I also I'm tried to be on the radio with your person there that you have to talk with each week, Jacob, if you know who I mean. And I didn't say their little slogan before they wanted me to, and I'm all right with the intelligence of the person, but cut me off real quick. But I plan on going on there again very nicely, and trying to say the things that you guys let me say, and any support that you give me, and keeping in mind anybody in the May primary, Republican primary, can vote in that Republican primary. And you can vote again in November. You may not be able to vote in the Democrat primary. You get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind if you do have two choices there, okay? And any questions or anything from you guys?
No, I don't have any.
Well, no, I just really appreciate you calling and sharing that that history there, because it's something I've heard from other folks as well, who were here at the time. That was around the time I was moving to Alabama and was still young, but that story is really powerful because it has had such an impact on so many communities and families. And I think you're right. Something I've talked about, whether it's at rallies or just one-on-one conversations or anything, is like we need a movement rooted in love, justice, and solidarity, and keep those values really central. We talk about the economics on this show a lot, and the material arguments for why we should come together, why working people should organize collectively, but there's a moral aspect to this as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to look out for the least of these. I think that's what we're called to do. And so I appreciate your call, Dwayne. Keep up the good work.
Well, and I wanted to remind everybody that I'm on Quora as Alabama Corruption. I have a whole lot of articles, and I have History of Horrors, Alabama Department of Corrections, y'all. And there's some articles on there that you'll really like that have to do with, how Harvard and North Carolina, and they're being told that they can't give the scholarships to who they want to and all that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I have a 3-page thing that if you put it in pages there, that you would be very interested in, which uses the Alabama redistricting and not following the Supreme Court order as that is still being racist, y'all. You get me? It was actually said by the courts to be the legislature of Alabama picking those districts because of that. That allows the use of that, according to what I'm saying in my article, means that still exists. Do you follow me? What the basis for what North Carolina and Harvard are basing wanting to give scholarships or select who goes to their school is based upon the existence of racism, and the very decisions made against Alabama and Louisiana for their districting shows that to still exist. Are you following me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, appreciate you bringing that up, Dwayne.
Yeah. Have a read of that, and take care, and thank you, everybody.
All right. Thanks, Dwayne. Appreciate it. Let's talk about, I got a couple of stories here that I want to try to get to. Let's do this U.S. Steel story.
Yeah, I know the steel workers put something out this week about that.
Yeah, so it's official now, despite the fact that the Trump administration has never involved the union that represents the workers in the negotiations. He did go ahead and sign off on the deal for Nippon to take over U.S. Steel last Friday, despite having been vociferously against it during the election. That's what he won on. He won on opposing this deal. Now he has supported it, saying that it's going to be a lot of investment in U.S. Steel's operations. It's going to create jobs in the country. And, there's a world where that happens, right? There is a world where there is, rather than Nippon completely taking over U.S. Steel, that it's more of an investment and a partnership, and there is, more jobs created in the United States, good union jobs from this influx of cash. That's not literally impossible, but we have still yet to seen what's written in black and white for the deal. This deal is still not public yet, and even what has been said publicly about it has already changed. You'll remember a couple of weeks ago, only 2 or 3 weeks ago, Donald Trump said that this is going to be a $14 billion investment in U.S. Steel's operation that's going to modernize the infrastructure, create jobs, create a new facility. $14 billion is the number that Trump was saying. And now that number is $11 billion. We have lost $3 billion in investment over only a few weeks. And the deal is still not public. We still do not know how that $11 billion is defined. How much of that money, $11 billion, are they saying is just standard operations and maintenance, right? Because it costs some level of money to just maintain status quo. Are they counting status quo maintenance in this $11 billion? They don't say. How much of it is going to modernize technology that is going to end up killing jobs, actually? If you increase efficiency, potentially you could be looking at a situation where once this mill employed 300 people, now it only includes 200 people, but that was made possible because of an investment of $500 million. Who knows? Is that happening? We don't know. How much of the $11 billion is going towards time-saving, job-killing efficiencies versus expanding operations? We don't know. None of this is being defined, and even as we still don't have it defined, we have lost $3 billion. $3 billion. I mean, that's a lot of money to just evaporate over the course of a couple of weeks, right? I mean, that should scare people who work at U.S. Steel. That should scare you, that you have lost $3 billion in proposed investment just over a couple of weeks, and for nothing either, right? I mean, there's not even been any comment on it. It's not as if 2 weeks ago they said, well, we're going to invest $14 billion, and now they're saying, well, we're investing $11 billion, and the reason that we're not investing this $3 billion is this, that, and the other thing, right? They're not even justifying it. It's just evaporated without justification. How is that happening? I don't know. We don't know. You don't know. Couple of the things that are still part of the public thing, the public pledges, though, are, $11 billion of new investment. They're also saying that they're going to pay U.S. Steel employees a $5,000 bonus. They're still saying that. Who knows what's going to happen there. And they are still saying that they're going to be building a new plant, I believe. They are investing $1 billion in Gary Works, including $300 million to reline blast furnace number 14, Gary Works in Indiana. It's pretty scary. The union said in a statement, "We are disappointed that President Trump has reversed course, jeopardizing the future of American steelmaking by allowing the merger, now described as, quote, a partnership of U.S. Steel and Nippon, to go forward, despite more than a year of the president speaking forcefully against it," District 7 Director Mike Millsap and International President David McCall said. Nippon has a long history of violating U.S. trade laws, robbing steelworkers and their communities of tens of thousands of jobs. Trading away the future of a core domestic industry to a corporation with this track record unquestionably threatens our national and economic security. So, really concerning stuff here. It is still part of the deal is maintaining U.S. leadership, not exactly clear how that's defined, having majority of Americans on the board, and give the United States government a golden share that would give it control over matters like number of board seats and production levels. The Indiana Economic Digest says that they say that the union is concerned that few details of the renegotiated deal have yet emerged. U.S. Steel, for instance, is publicly traded and has to open its books to the union and everyone else, while Nippon Steel's North American subsidiary is not listed on the stock market, making its finances more opaque. McCall continued in a statement saying, perhaps the historic USS logo will remain, but it seems that it will be no more than a smokescreen to allow a wholly owned, privately held subsidiary of a Japanese corporation to be called American. Details matter. Neither the government nor the companies have publicly identified all the terms of the proposed transaction. Last week, they publicly identified investments worth for more than $14 billion. This week, that's dropped to $11 billion. Where are the investments going to be made, and can we really count on them? And while there is a claimed golden share, what can we expect from Nippon's leadership in Japan, which continues to build up overcapacity in steel globally and has been charged again with dumping by the Department of Commerce just weeks ago? So really concerning stuff here. Like I said, I mean, there's a world, and I've heard that, I have heard building trades unions talk to me about how this deal is they have hope about it because they say that they're aware of, improvements and project orders that are basically just waiting on this deal to be signed. And so it's going to create building trades jobs in addition to hopefully USW jobs. But it's also opaque. We just don't know. And so that's why the USW, the United Steelworkers, are so concerned about it and continue to be concerned about it. And so following the deal, they said they released a statement where they said management at U.S. Steel and Nippon have, since December 2023, aggressively promoted their deal, pouring vast amounts of resources into downplaying concerns regarding both the long-term future of USW members' jobs and our national security while ensuring their sale remained in the public view. It finally found acceptance by President Donald Trump, who now, through his golden share, has assumed a startling degree of personal power over a corporation. As the sale concludes, it seems likely that attention will dissipate. U.S. Steel's PR machine will power down, and the majority of elected officials will turn their attention elsewhere. However, our union will remain. We will continue watching, holding Nippon to its commitments, and we will use the most powerful tool workers have against global corporations: collective bargaining. Our current agreement expires in September of 2026, and rest assured, if our job security, pensions, retiree health care, or other hard-earned benefits are threatened, we are ready to respond with the full strength and solidarity of our membership. And so that is a really important thing that they have the union, that they're a part of the union, and that they can fight back through the union. So, Godspeed and good luck to members of the United Steelworkers, and make sure that you don't take your eye off the company and get prepared. I mean, the contract expires in September of 2026. If you're a USW member working at U.S. Steel, you need to be saving. You need to be saving. You need to be saving and preparing for a strike. That's possible. That's very possible. So start saving, start preparing, get ready for a strike. Get your affairs in order, as the preachers once told me. We had somebody in the chat saying that it's interesting that Dwayne is running on the Republican ticket. I noted that Kowalski, who is a regular caller on the Majority Report, runs as a Republican in Nebraska sometimes. Quirky Geek Girl says, are they trying to take back the party? I think there's... I think that would be the ideal thing for folks maybe like Dwayne and Kowalski, but I think also there's something of a belief that running as a Republican is basically the only way to win in a state like Nebraska or Alabama. And I also think Dwayne is conservative. I don't think Kowalski is conservative generally speaking, but I think Dwayne is conservative. I imagine that he's pro-life, and he has positions on immigration maybe that we would disagree with and things like that. And I'm sure there are other things, but I think generally Dwayne is conservative, but he feels like conservatism is more than the social stuff that people talk about a lot, right? So
well, I've always wondered, what would it look like if someone ran as a Republican and tried to reclaim the mantle of Abraham Lincoln and the radical Republicans of the 1860s and 70s? It's probably a stretch, but it would be fun. It would be fun if someone actually tried that. But I think realistically in Alabama, it's not unusual for more moderate or kind of centrist or even relatively like ideologically vacant folks to run as Republicans because they just do the math and they look at the map and they see that, oh, well, this district is always electing a Republican, in a landslide every cycle. So if I want to win, I've got to run in the GOP primary. And, for most offices, in our area, they're not even contested in November, right? So whoever wins the Republican primary is almost, is going to be the person who wins the office. So it's just it's a calculation. And, you can debate whether that's a good approach or not. Obviously there are folks who would encourage you to run as a Democrat, to try to build up the party, to build up the opposition. There are folks that we've talked to on this program who are running as independents because they figure, hey, if the Republican Party's not representing me and they're the majority and they seem to dominate things, the Democratic Party's not really a factor, well, I'm just going to run as an independent, right? I'm going to get the signatures on the petition to get on the ballot. And, so that's another angle that folks are taking. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out because in 2026, Alabama, the entire state government is up for election. I mean, everybody, every state house and state senate member, the governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, and quite a few local races, in addition to Congress as well, which everyone will be electing their federal House members. But yeah, that's going to be a really interesting thing to see how those dynamics shake out, how many people are going to take the run within the Republican primary approach, how many people are going to try to, clear a path as a Democrat, and then how many people are just going to do their own thing and go independent.
Yeah. I've got one more story that I want to get to, and then I think there are a couple maybe that Adam has, depending on the time. But this just came out this morning, like just a couple of hours ago, and it's so wild that I wanted to share it with you all. The Washington Post reports Trump and GOP's tax bill would sell off USPS's brand new EVs. And so apparently one of the things that has come out of the Senate version of the budget bill is a plan to sell off 7,000 brand new EVs from the Postal Service and rip up the charging infrastructure that has already been installed at post offices. Literally burning money. Right? This has been reported by Jacob Bogage, Jacob Bogage, Bogage. So, in his reporting, he talks about how the Postal Service, they started a plan back in 2022 to purchase 66,000 electric mail delivery vehicles. And the agency expects to spend almost $10 billion on the project, $3 billion of that coming from taxpayer dollars to subsidize it, the rest coming from the U.S. Postal Service, which is generally speaking self-sufficient. And he reports that the Senate's version of Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill would see the General Services Administration take possession of the nearly 7,200 new postal EVs and associated infrastructure and put the assets up for auction. The proposal is unlikely to generate much revenue for the government because there is almost no private sector interest in mail trucks and used EV charging equipment built specifically for the Postal Service and already installed in postal facilities generally cannot be resold. Peter Pastor, the Postal Service's Vice President for Government Relations and Public Policy, wrote senators this month that, quote, the funds realized by auctioning the vehicles and infrastructure would be negligible. Much of the infrastructure is literally buried under parking lots, and there is no market for used charging equipment. It's so, talk about government waste. It would be one thing. The plan has not been totally executed, right? The plan has not been totally executed to purchase 66,000. There's only been 7,000 purchased so far. So, it would be one thing with an efficiency argument to say, okay, we're not going to purchase the rest of these vehicles, right? But selling postal trucks? I mean, like that guy said, what is who is the audience for that? Who wants used postal trucks? I mean, there's not a market for that, and especially used chargers specifically made for postal trucks. I mean, it's just burning money. It is literally just burning money for why? For why? And I think that probably part of it is to make the Postal Service specifically to make it less efficient, so that they can point to that inefficiency and say, look, they need to be privatized. We need to get rid of the Postal Service because they can't balance a budget or whatever, right? And these new the new vehicles are needed, whether they are EVs or not. New vehicles are needed for the Postal Service because, as Jacob reports in the Washington Post, the Postal Service is in desperate need of new delivery vehicles. Its fleet of, quote, long-life vehicles hit the streets between 1987 and 1994. The trucks are so old that the mail agency must reverse engineer discontinued vehicle parts to conduct basic repairs. The vehicles occasionally burst into flames due to decades of overuse. I mean, so they need new vehicles. They've already got some new vehicles, and the Trump administration basically just wants to set them all on fire. It's insane. And so, government efficiency, I guess. Hopefully, hopefully the people at the Postal Service are able to convince the senators that is not, that's not what's going to be good for people. Because making the Postal Service burn dollars is not helpful. It's not going to help it balance a budget. It's not going to help it, generate revenue. It's just going to be making the Postal Service less efficient and more difficult for the Postal Service to operate. It's just sabotage, right? It's just sabotage. If you're a postal worker and you hear this, I'd be interested in your thoughts, especially if you are one of the lucky few to be driving one of these new EV vehicles. How do you like the new EV vehicles? Let me know. 844-899-TVLR. That is 844-899-8857. You can call that number at any time, day or night, and leave a voicemail. We'll respond to it on the next program. Would really love to hear your thoughts on that. Adam, we're at about an hour, so we could go ahead and wrap anytime. I know there were a couple of things that you might want to talk about, so I'll leave it up to you what we do next.
Yeah, I'll do one final segment here because I know next week's going to be a little different. We actually won't be live next week. We'll have all sorts of material compiled. We're still working on that. We both have a meeting to attend, unfortunately. Or fortunately, we'll see how it goes. But I did want to take a moment to just remark on the fact that it is June. It is Pride Month. And so, you're seeing the Pride celebrations and Pride flags, and you're seeing all that across the country. And I just wanted to remind folks that Pride started as a protest. It began with working class, queer and trans folks, black and brown folks, people who were fighting for their lives and dignity against police violence, discrimination, and a society that really treated them as disposable. And folks are still fighting today. On this show, we say that workers deserve dignity. Every worker. Gay, straight, bi, trans, black, white, rural, city, union, non-union. At the end of the day, we're all workers, and we've got more in common with each other than we'll ever have with the bosses who are trying to divide us. So, for Pride Month, I want to just lift up the general theme of solidarity over bigotry, because the labor movement has a critical role to play in standing up for LGBT rights, not just in June, but every day of the year. And I came across a few news stories this week doing our research for the show, and saw where there are unions who are showing up in real ways this Pride Month across U.S. and Canada. The International Association of Firefighters, IAFF, highlighted affiliates who were participating in Pride events, not just by marching, but by giving back. IAFF members are making donations to LGBT advocacy groups, partnering with community organizations fighting for safety and equality. And they wrote, when our union shows up for Pride, it's not just a gesture, it's a message to our members and our communities. You belong, you matter, and we've got your back. And I wanted to lift that up because, the firefighters union may not be the first one you think of when you think about unions doing Pride solidarity. But I appreciated that. And the air traffic controllers with NATCA also stepped up this month. They were marching proudly in the World Pride Parade in Washington, D.C., and said, as a union, we support inclusive workplaces, not just in policy, but in practice. It's easy to fly a rainbow flag, but showing up and speaking out, especially in the face of a growing backlash, that's what solidarity is all about. An injury to one is an injury to all. And we talked about the United Steelworkers just a moment ago. The United Steelworkers also put out a statement this month. Celebrating Pride Month must mean more than changing logos or issuing statements. It means fighting anti-LGBT policies in our workplaces and communities. We cannot turn our backs to injustice. And that's the kind of clarity that we need. Because right now there is a coordinated attack on LGBT people, especially trans folks and youth. Laws are being passed to restrict healthcare, censor books, ban art, and criminalize people for just being who they are. And I'm not fooled by this, because these attacks come from the same forces trying to break our unions, gut our schools, and hand more power to the wealthy elite. When they say parental rights or religious freedom, they mean the right of corporations and politicians to silence and punish anyone who doesn't conform. LGBT workers, especially queer and trans people of color, are more likely to be underpaid, harassed, fired, or denied benefits. In many places, they still have no legal protection from workplace discrimination. And that's just one more reason why unions matter. Unions are one of the few tools working people have to fight back and to win, whether it's through a union contract that protects against discrimination, or a union hall that builds community and solidarity across our differences. Organized workers can make change happen. The USW, United Steelworkers, reminded us justice is never given, it must be demanded. Pride is about that demand. And here in the South, our role is even more important. Pride parades in southern cities, including here in Alabama, often face protests, hostility, even threats of violence. And LGBT folks here deal with a double burden of not just their identity under attack, but the realities of being working class here in the South, right? Poverty, underfunded services, and just general disdain from the politicians who claim to speak from us, to speak for us. But we do know better. We know that you can be queer and Southern, you can be trans and working class, you can be a firefighter, a steel worker, a nurse, a teacher, a grocery store clerk, and also proudly LGBT. And you can be not LGBT and stand in solidarity with folks who are, right? As labor folks in the South, we have a responsibility to say that y'all means all. When the bosses try to divide us, when the right wing tries to scapegoat and smear our neighbors, we can't take the bait. We have to stick together. Because when we fight for each other, we can all win. So if you're listening today and your union hasn't been talking about this, maybe start the conversation. See what you can do, talking with members in your union. And of course, if you're not in a union, you should be. And now's the time to start organizing with your coworkers and having one-on-one conversations. There are so many different things that we can do to fight for justice in the workplace and in the community, from the ballot box and beyond. So I would encourage all members to embrace our values as unions. An injury to one is an injury to all, right? You don't have to identify a certain way. You don't have to understand someone's experience or background necessarily to know that you want them treated with dignity and respect. And I think that's what it boils down, for me. Like many of you listening, I have loved ones who are LGBT. And I am concerned for them. I'm concerned when the government is targeting them and their rights. I'm concerned when employers feel emboldened to violate rights and to discriminate at will. And I think it's really important that we show up for each other. We have to be willing to fight for someone we don't know. We have to be willing to fight for someone who's different from us. Because what we share in common as fellow workers is our power that runs this society, our labor power, right? We show up to work, we generate value. The economy runs on our labor. Gay or straight, white or black, rural, urban, right? Working class people, we have the power. And it's really hard for us to realize that power because we stay so divided. And in the South, they have made a real art and science of that division, right? We know here in the South, we have a long, ugly history of bigotry of all kinds, various stripes. But we also have a really proud, rich tradition of everyday people uniting and fighting back, uniting against these divisions, right? And so that is the kind of heritage that I want to celebrate about the South. We mentioned the Confederacy earlier. A lot of people think Southern heritage is rebel flags and Robert E. Lee, plantations, right? All that kind of stuff. But we have a really, really strong, proud history of working class people uniting in solidarity to build a better world for all of us, to build a better future that we can believe in. So that's what kind of heritage I'm proud of. That's the kind of heritage of the South that we have to celebrate. And, you know, we have to build a labor movement that's powerful and militant and also inclusive, that doesn't leave any member behind, as Secretary-Treasurer Fred Redmond said earlier in the program. We have to be rooted in the idea that our strength is in each other, not in fear, not in division, but in solidarity. That is our strength. It's our greatest tool, is the solidarity of working people coming together and uniting around our common interest. So this Pride Month and every month, we choose solidarity over bigotry. And that was all I wanted to say in closing, because I know this will be my last live appearance in June. So I wanted to make sure I said that. Also wanted to give a couple plugs before we wrap, because there are some good events coming up. I told you about the Labor Notes National Call that happened last week, Beating the Billionaires. I did get a chance to attend that and really enjoyed that and appreciated that. Labor Notes does have some things coming up this month that I really encourage you to check out. They've got a stewards training and they've got a couple other workshops as well. So on the stewards workshop, this is going to be June 25th at 6:30 p.m. Central, Maintaining Unity in an Open Shop. And this workshop is intended for stewards and elected officers who work closely with stewards. So if that's not you, not really the target audience. But I know we have some shop stewards and officers out there in the audience. More and more unions than ever are operating under open shop or right to work conditions. And we're very familiar with those here in the South, of course. But this is particularly true after attacks on federal workers. So join Labor Notes again, June 25th, 6:30 p.m. Central, for an online workshop for shop stewards to discuss strategies to build worker power through maintaining unity despite attempts to undercut the union. And the other big workshop they have coming up that I wanted to lift up would be Winning a Strong Contract, Parts 1 and 2. It's going to start on July 7th at 6 p.m. Central. What's the secret of winning a strong contract? Here's a hint. You won't find it at the negotiations table. So save the date for a two-part workshop from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Central on Monday, July 7th, and then Monday, July 14th, on how to build a successful contract campaign and harness the power of the rank and file membership to win the strongest possible contract. So I wanted to make sure I lift those up. One of the things that you can do is learn and always be growing your skills and, you know, your knowledge and information that you have to be in the good fight. It's going to take all of us doing what we can to win what we need. And so I really appreciate Labor Notes putting out this information, putting out these trainings. And again, I want to thank everyone for tuning in today. Jacob, I think that's all I have.
All right. Well, we'll see y'all next week.
All power to the workers.